Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm glad you can come out and glad you joined me. As you can see, I have a very artistic setup here in lieu of the topic, and I'm just becoming more of an artsy guy myself. So I got plenty of art here. And as this is a topic for Valentine's Day, and it's a topic for um, just the matters of the heart, you got to have some love and beauty around here. So I wish I could add more. I'm getting more used to this software I'm using for the broadcast, but um, this topic is a topic that is very important. The bedrock of civilization, which is family, rests on this, but even deeper than that, the matters of the soul, and it's in poor form. It's in poor form today. Can everyone hear me? Just sound check. Sometimes the sound is kind of messed up, but I think the sound is okay for today. Um, yeah, I made kind of a goofy trailer about finding true love in 3 steps. Um, just to kind of do a parody of how nonsensical and how ridiculous the I would say the current generations from baby boomer to millennial, and sadly, what chance does Gen Z stand a chance in this rotting education system of understanding the matters of the heart? Um, and there's been brokenness before those, but now it's like in such full-fledged um, dysfunction. It's just a pure dysfunction junction. I mean, it's out of control. It's a rarity to hear about a happy, healthy, balanced family with their children. Now it's getting rare just to hear about a family and one man, one woman with their children, but living a happy life. Without any affairs, without any divorces, without any major drama, without any major mental illness, without any sort of strange ideas. And on top of that, it's even rarer to hear about people that go outside of their shells, outside of their comfort zones. People that want to keep aiming for something higher. There's a lot of complacency too. People have families, but what are they doing for anyone else outside of their family? And you may think, well, of course, their responsibility is to their family first and foremost, and that's true. But so people have a lot of free time, and they spend most of the time sitting down at the TV. And in my faith, that ain't gonna cut it. That's lukewarmness. You have to care about your neighbor. It says in the scripture, everyone cares for their friends, but what the Lord says is you have to care for everyone. We're supposed to be heroic. We're supposed to love even our enemies. So there's this whole next level of love, which is what this show is about, that is not being met, or it's being met by very few people. It's people are starving from love, to be quite honest with you. How are people starving with love? We talk about the poor all the time. A lot of people try to make that to be the only reason to do anything. Selfless is the poor. Well, the poor, there's, I'm living in a country where the poor still can eat pretty well. But I do have to say that the poor are including the people that are starving from matters of the heart. There's people that, spiritual matters. We see the addictions of our times. We see the brokenness of our times. We see the evils of our times. All of this clearly is, you don't even have to be a Christian to believe this. You can just look at the psychological realities and the people's upbringings and the environments that they're brought up in, and just the weakness of humanity as it is, and the 20th century, the horrors of the 20th century. Something ain't right around here. But it all stems from love. It all stems from a disconnect there. Even the great monsters that everyone, uses and can objectively agree on, right? The great monsters like, Rasputin and Hitler and all these people that are messed up, and we can all say, these are really these really just horrific people, even serial killers. Well, if you look into the timeline of a person's soul, it's very rare to see a psychopath, who is just a cartoonish, malevolent from, age 6, psychopath. Usually there is extreme, strange upbringing. There is something went wrong in that person's upbringing. Yes, there's free will, but we got to admit that we've contributed to a lot of that. So we like to look at these boogeymen and use them to dismiss our contribution to, um, creating monsters. But the truth is that perhaps there wouldn't have been an Adolf Hitler had he been, raised in a proper Christian home. Yes, he was baptized, but there's plenty of baptized people that go to hell. I mean, that I'm not that. This is not a channel where where we pretend that there's nothing wrong in the church, that there is nothing wrong with how Christianity has been applied and presented. Okay, so I empathize with people that roll their eyes and consider, a lot of us religious hypocrites, because a lot of us are, and a lot of us don't have a lot of depth. I am not that kind of Christian who believes, oh well, they just didn't pick up the Bible enough. Well, there's more than just picking up the Bible. There's applying it. There's meditating on the Scripture. There's looking at the different theologians, which I have above me. So there's that. There's the whole breakdown of the family. But even within that breakdown of the family, well, where do families come from? Well, they come from courtship, right? They come from a young man and a young woman eventually getting interested in each other, and the babies don't come from storks, right? And um, hopefully there is a healthy matrimony from those two people, and their love abounds, and they have children, and that's how civilization happens. Well, what's happening in the dating scene these days? It's pretty bizarre. Okay. Now Elizabeth is mentioning addiction pointing to lack of community versus genetics. Well, I would have to say it's both, but I'm not going to get into genetics just yet. Genetic theory is evolving, and it doesn't account for everything, although it is important. But of course, everyone knows about, people that are, let's say there's people, the mother did drugs, and it vastly increases the propensity for the child to be addicted and have an addictive personality, or to fall into that. There's also a spiritual thing going on here with generational demons and stuff. All these coincidences where somehow it just seems like the same situation happens in families. But what about the matters of romance? Okay, what about that? We always think about drug and alcohol abuse as an addiction or obsession or something that destroys the soul. But what about broken, twisted understandings of the passions? Okay. Um, I think that that is considered as another both generational problem, it's a cultural problem. We know what's being promoted in our culture as, I mean, they don't even care about love. They literally are just out and out with sex, and that's it. Like they're literally, I mean, you look at the mainstream rappers and hip hop artists, they literally are just like, they're like flashing hail Satan signs, Illuminati signs, and twerking and all that. They don't even care anymore. The cat's out of the bag. So I don't have to worry too much about saying, well, I think our idea of love and beauty is twisted, because people have already considered it. It's like God is dead, right? This saying God is dead, by Friedrich Nietzsche, and we have killed him, which is a very misunderstood phrase. But I don't have to worry about that because everyone's already agreed that love is dead. They don't even care. In fact, it's if anything, you can barely find someone who uses the word, and if they do, they say, well, it's just all relative. Love is a feeling or something, which of course, that they never really believe that, because if you just look at their brokenness and their broken relationships, clearly they don't believe that, and they're always complaining about it. So I think I think I have the right to this soapbox here because no one knows what they're talking about, and the results are in, and we're heading for a massive rude awakening with what the birth rate and divorce rates are showing. I mean, I think now's the time to re-look at everything we know about this, but not in a way that's strange, just in a way that's human and humble and just honest. We need to be honest, okay? Um, uh, Honestly, I was involved in the online dating scene. I'm not anymore because I wasted too much money on it. And I used to just go along to get along. I used to say, well, you know what, I can't complain. There's only people are who they are, and I have to just make do with what I see. And I'm not perfect myself, and that's true. But I would see things like, which I kind of made fun of in my last video, with the dating speed run guy, which I just find so funny. As a gamer, I find it hilarious. So there's different groups of people that you'll run into on the online dating world. Okay, the first group of people aren't really they're they're the hookup culture people, and what they're doing is they're casting this huge net. I don't know why on a dating site they would say open to open relationships, or just looking for a fun time. Uh, that's not dating. That's a hookup thing. But I guess the idea is mathematically, if they put their profile not just on Tinder but other dating sites, they can catch a bigger net. I don't know. But there's the people that are just hedonists, right? They are open about it. Now, I actually um, I actually prefer that than group two because at least they're starting from some sense of honesty, and it's better to be hot or cold than just playing a game and a head game and pretending what someone to be someone you're not. But yeah, so there's those people. Now, why is hedonism bad? We'll get to that, but they're there for the party. Okay, so that's the first group of people. Obviously, I would see lots of that on the more mainstream sites. On the Christian dating sites, you don't really see it that much, um, but unless it's like a general site with the ability to say your religion. So there's them, and the second group is the worst. The second group are the people that how do I put this? They say they are looking for love, and they have this huge list of demands. Me. I want this, this, and 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 this. And if you don't fit this criterion, you're done. Um, and right off the gate, someone like that, um, it's just disgusting, honestly, because they're warping our understandings of love, and this is the group of people I have the biggest beef with. Okay, because if they had just been honest and said, "Look, I just want to hook up," or "Look, I am a very needy person and I need all of this," or if they just not just stayed out of the dating scene and just been and just realized that they have a problem with their own narcissism, then it would have been much better. But they're, in because of the starvation of love, there's a lot of desperate suckers who still aim for them. Um, and it's sad, this is mostly for the girls, that behavior, but there are dudes. I mean, the dudes have a different way of doing things where they just aim for the prettiest girl. Well, I guess it's just the way guys are. We're more like straightforward, so um, I guess there isn't that much of a problem there. But you don't need to argue with me about it because there are tons of rant videos already about the dating scene and its woes and that group of people. The first group of people is nowhere near as bad. Okay, what about and here's the thing: this group of people never say what they'll do for you. They know that they usually are generally good-looking people because they normally people that aren't good-looking know deep down that they can't get away with it, and so they know that they can dangle you around their finger, because there's not many people interested in courtship or dating, and so And usually they have an agenda. Usually these are people who were in group one but are now trying to settle down, and they're bringing all of their garbage into love. And these are the same people that eventually do find a sucker. They settle down, and then there's a divorce. And why? And by a divorce, all right, I'm not talking about a divorce where there's a criminal offense, there's domestic abuse. I'm talking about a no-fault divorce. Okay, according to my faith, that's not good. Okay, we're not talking about a criminal problem where there's clear abuse going on. A no-fault divorce is the most popular kind of divorce. You can't sway my view on this. I know what I'm talking about. I've looked at the data. It's kind of like the same with abortion. Okay, they always try to look for the exceptions to the rule where there is some new different scenario which makes it seem more sympathetic. But the fact of the matter is the majority of divorces because people just decide, well, the love ran dry, or it was just someone that showed their true colors and they just decide to up and leave with everything because it's a game to them. Um, they're wolf in sheep's clothing, and that's what usually happens when you look at today's culture. So yes, these are the people that are doing the biggest amount of damage, because the first group will always be there. There will always be people that just are hedonists, okay, to the end of time. For example, the oldest what do you call it? Career, or not career, but job in the world, or occupation. One of the oldest was prostitution. Okay, there, in the most ancient of times, they had that problem, and there always will be problems with that. Okay, there will always be problems with people just, wanting just basic pleasure. But at least they can stay in their own area. And another good thing about group number one is when you're honestly struggling with your own sinfulness and your own wild passions, which I'm included in that. I'm a sinner, and I think most people are. What with the pornographic culture we have, but if you're honestly struggling with it, or you're just misguided, there's a good chance that you'll hit a rock bottom where you can quickly turn your life around because you become disillusioned with only looking at the flesh, only worshiping the flesh. Okay, you can at least start somewhere. Whereas in group number two, they're playing a game, this big manipulative game. They're not being honest with themselves, and they wonder why things never work out, or why people are just so turned off. All right. Now there's group number three. Group number three I see in the dating scene is the reactionaries. Okay, and as you see this again on the Christian dating sites and other sites. Okay, you have people that are trying to, they look at the mess of group number one and two, and they essentially double down on tradition. Okay, they double down on tradition, and they're usually open about it, and they want to have a family, and they want to create a counterculture, which is against what one and two are doing. Usually what one is doing. Unfortunately, they're not as much against what number two is doing, and there are many group people in number three that are actually in number two. Um, and it's sad because I like tradition. I like I'm kind of a romanticism fanboy, which is a style, which is a era of art, literature, and music where people were more open about the passions. It wasn't so stigmatized, and that's where you see the beginnings of like the modern understandings of realistic portrayals of beauty and things, which affect fiction and many things today. We, you know. Um, but sadly, many of these people that are traditional, it's only an exterior thing. Even the religious people. It's not all of them, but they need to cross the Rubicon to the interior tradition. Okay, which involves, there's no easy way out here. I think that the matters of the heart, it's like a muscle. The heart's a muscle, right? And the matters of love is like a muscle, spiritually and emotionally. You have to, if you have to, you are what you digest, right? So if you're, um, if you're consuming beautiful and good things in what you do, you eventually become that, right? And the ultimate of that is prayer. And so a lot of these people that I run into, God bless them, but they still have great social anxieties. They have a lot of baggage. They're awkward. They don't know how to carry a conversation. They only understand the law, like, oh, I'm not like those people over there. It becomes a very pharisaical thing. But then when you're done talking about that, they have nothing else to talk about, right? They're stuck in the gossip like everyone else. They're really not, it's really a facade. It's a mask. So the conservatives have a lot to work on in that regard. All the, and also we're not going to sway people over if we're only talking about what's wrong. We have to talk about what's right. That, like what St. Thomas Aquinas and G.K. Chesterton above me are trying to spread, and they had to deal with that prudishness. Okay, then there are people that are literally just liars that literally say they're traditional but they're not, or they have their own agendas, and I'm seeing that problem there. Okay, so there's a lot to be worked on for group number 3. Group number 4 are the black pillars. Okay, the black pillars. I used to be a black pillar. I'm still recovering from it, and I still have some attributes of it. Okay, we're talking about groups such as r slash incel, a board on there, and all the people that are like that. MGTOW, MRA. What else is going on? Paleo conservatives, um, preppers. Let's see. Who else? I know I'm missing some other groups. Um, I think that's it. But these are the people. Like people that are hermits. Not that many. We know one guy here, right? But these are people that are disillusioned with groups 1 through 2 and sometimes 3, and they just give up, right? They're just like, you know what, this is just so nasty. And that's very sad because mankind is naturally biased by our own natural inclination to be interested in finding, a spouse, and here we are, and people are still giving up, which shows how bad it is, you know. Um, but those are them, and that was me. I was just completely folded into my video games, and I was just like, you know what? Especially during the Obama years, I got to tell you, It was almost like I was a little bit happier because I gave up on everything, so I wasn't really able to be disappointed. Um, but there are these people that they they're smart enough to see through it, but they are staring into the abyss, and they don't know what to do with themselves. Okay, and the problem with that is that you can create greater neurosis and depression through despair. Obviously, despair is bad. So the fifth group, which I'm transitioning into, and I think I'm becoming kind of a leader in, is the mystics. Okay, the mystics, and I mean mystics universally because I'm not just any person who's interested in mysticism. I'm interested in Catholic mysticism. Mysticism could be for many religions, but this is mystics usually arise when things like this happen. They usually come from group number 4. They can come from the other groups too. But these are people that are trying to find, they're disillusioned with the world, but they know that they have, for their own sanity and for their own soul, they need to find something higher to replace it. You can't just be, you know, having dust and sackcloth on your face and walking around chain smoking cigarettes, and that's your life, and drinking yourself away from all your problems. You don't want to become like that. It's obviously not going to do you any good. Um, and they're finding that the mystics that are coming out, um, they're finding that there's some experience beyond the universe or part of the universe. But unfortunately, for group number 5, they have a problem because they're filled with fakers. I mean, there's so many people on in the dating world, who they say they're into yoga. They say they're into Alan Watts. They say they're usually into the occult or something like that. Which the occult isn't even mysticism, really. The occult is another superficiality, and it's very dangerous. But they that's the part we that's the problem. People will say that they're into this or that. They have a cursory understanding of it. They usually get into it because they have some feelings, or they have they feel something. It's an emotionalism. It's to them. It usually goes along with drugs, right? There's a lot of people interested in hallucinogenics, and it's hard to separate the wheat from the chaff, because you could have someone that's into this, and they're really more like a group number one. It's just a form of hedonism for them. But they could also be from group number four, or they could be legitimate and they actually want to find a higher purpose in their life. And it's very hard to determine what's what. So that's where I'm at. Like, I'd love to run to someone that has some of my interests, um, but it's hard to find that, because you don't know who's actually, you know, using it for their own agenda again. Good morning, John and Elizabeth, by the way. Thanks for dropping by. Um, and so, what to do? What to do? Well, I don't really know everything of what to do. I can just lay out my case, and I have, this is a prayer channel, so I hope at the end of this I can inspire you to become a mystic, to experience love beyond all telling, and to make you interested. But in terms of how to fix this, it just seems that everyone is so confused on this. There's very few people that, it's usually it's a miracle. I really think God is, literal Cupid is going around matchmaking those, because there's so few people that are sincerely trying to love, or even know what love is, right? So let's unpack um, where my stance is currently on love and romance. Okay, now I have this picture, classic art picture over here, and it's Valentine's Day, right? And we all know about the custom of giving flowers to someone you like on Valentine's Day, or just any just asking someone out in general. Um, and flowers are beautiful, aren't they? Right? A flower metaphysically represents love itself. If you look at the picture and you see a flower, and a flower smells nice, and a flower is beautiful and it's colorful, right? For some reason, it's a very special part of creation. It draws us into that intimate part of our emotions. And I guess the first place we can start with is to just look at nature, okay? And this is the man named by the name of Henry David Thoreau. He is part of the transcendentalist movement of authors and religious people. He was kind of like a new ager. I consider him like one of the manlier hippies. But during the 1800s, there was this movement called transcendentalism, where going out into nature of the West, of the beautiful American West, and interacting with the Native American religions, which were pantheistic, and people that generally revere nature to such a degree, uh, they would become inspired, and there is like a kind of pseudo-Christian fusion of that. There was one actual religious movement called the Transcendentalists, who you can visit today. They had their own little commune, experimental commune, living, surviving out there on a farm. And Henry David Thoreau would, like many people, would look into nature, and he would have these existential encounters where he realized that nature convicts the soul. Okay, why, we look at a flower, and it doesn't, this is why people love animals too. Flowers don't bother people. They don't have agendas. They're beautiful. They smell nice. They're vulnerable, right? it's idealistic, right? And here's some poetry that he would, some poetry excerpts from him. Let me just pull it up here. Okay, this one is all things are current found. All things are current found on earthly ground. Spirits and elements have their descents. Night and day, year on year, high and low, far and near. These are our own aspects, these are our own regrets. Ye gods of the shore, who abide evermore, I see you far headland, stretching on either hand. I hear the sweet evening sounds from your undecaying grounds. Cheat me no more with time. Take me to your clime. Okay, so clearly he looks at nature and he's inspired and he sees how much better we could be if we imitate the peace of nature, the love of nature. Okay, this guy was a mystic. You know, I looked into some of his beliefs. He was trying out different beliefs and blending it into his own thing. Now, I am not a monist. Okay, I'm a Western mystic. I'm a Christian. So I will have to do another broadcast as to why I don't agree with monism and why I'm a theist and why it's better. You know, no offense to any other people of religions, but you know, you would probably say the same of mine. But usually with monism, people look into nature and their perspective is nature is a living force. It's some we're connected to it somehow. We're part of it, and we need to respect other people through the beauty and the peace of nature. Okay, here's another poem of Henry David Thoreau. It's called "I Am the Autumnal Sun." Sometimes a mortal feels in himself nature. Not his father, but his mother stirs within him, and he becomes immortal with her immortality. From time to time she claims kindredship with us, and some globule from her veins steals up into our own. I am the autumnal sun. With autumn gales my race is run. When will the hazel put forth its flowers, or the grape ripen under my bowers? When will the harvest or the hunter's moon turn my midnight into mid-noon? I am all sere and yellow, and to my core mellow. The mast is dropping within my woods. The winter is lurking within my moods. And the rustling of the withered leaf is the constant music of my grief. Okay? Very passionate guy. Clearly he's, open with his feelings. A very romantic fellow, especially for these times. Praise be romanticism. People are becoming more honest with their feelings. And it's very important in matters of love to be honest with their feelings. It's not good to repress their feelings. That's kind of my case here. Feed the soul and treat it tenderly and follow the gospel of love, follow the Beatitudes, follow selflessness, and through that, you will find healing in the brokenness of our current malaise, right? Our current problems. And that's where the problem stemmed from, okay? So am I saying that taking some more hikes out in nature could help? Yeah, absolutely. But you have to be mindful, okay? And I don't mean, this is a kind of a universal term. I'm not saying mindfulness, but you have to be mindful of how it speaks to you, okay? And be idealistic. Idealism is gone. We've replaced idealism with this nihilism and pragmatism and kind of this peer pressure, no thinking outside the box, empiricism. Like we learn things in textbooks. That's basically the height of our intellect these days. Oh, I learned it in a textbook, and now they're telling me what to say, and I'll go do it. And without ideals, you'll just join the crowd jumping off the cliff. What if everyone is wrong? What if we need people to challenge the status quo? That is always what usually gives good fruits. People that challenge the status quo and are usually hated for it and persecuted for it are usually the ones that help in the end. And especially in this matter, we need people talking about it pronto. And so the naturalists and the transcendentalists, but the naturalist part of it, they revere nature, and the problem that I have with revering nature too much is we forget about the dignity of man, because man is sinful, and we do not reflect the beauty of the flowers and the doggos we own, and the sky and the moon and the sun. I mean, I've been in New Jersey traffic, to say the least. We it's not the same. But just because people are messed up does not mean we should throw away ideals. And sadly, within monistic, pantheistic thought, there's still a despair, and it's despair of the salvation of mankind. We look at these flowers and all these people doing yoga and in group five and all these people getting into Buddhism. They often want to be, they get kind of confused, right? They want to literally be one with the flower. Well, a flower is still, I mean, it's not able to save anyone from a burning building. It's beautiful, but it's not conscious. Okay, it needs us. It's definitely a lower life form, as beautiful as it is. We're being real. Sometimes you have to be a little bit objective here. The Western mystical or the Catholic mystical or Orthodox, a Christian mysticism will look at this beautiful piece of art, and the Holy Spirit tells them that the flowers and the trees and the birds and the bees are pointing towards the glory of God, and God is this, incarnate in Jesus. So we look at it and we say, well, can a person be like or emanate qualities that make us think of these things? Okay. Um, that is the interior encounter. That is the fire that you encounter in prayer when you're out in nature. And I've done that a lot. I love nature. I dig it. I consider myself a bit of a transcendentalist, because I always love going to the ocean and things like that. Um, the transcendentalists were Protestant, because there was a lot of anti-Catholic sentiment. Many of them did not know about the Desert Fathers. The Apostolic Church was doing this long before they did it. And I mean, just look at the life of Christ in the gospel. Okay, he would go out alone to himself, out in the wilderness. Clearly, there's this universal dimension of needing quiet and silence and being drawn into the peace, beyond all understanding, that you need to distance yourself from people. Um, or they'll just mess up your vibe. So I understand this, and so let me just put Henry David Thoreau aside. So if you go back on those dating profiles and you ask yourself, you channel a little Henry David Thoreau and say, dost thou fair maiden remind thee of a rose? Maybe exteriorly, maybe. I mean, sometimes you see, it's weird. It's like there's a glamorous, promiscuous side of the exterior beauty, but even wearing something truly remarkable that inspires someone, it's that's still arousing, still attractive, but not just playing on someone's passions, but it's actually amazing. You don't run into that. People wear the same clothes, and then even when they do something a little bit better, it's obviously not an original thought or an original pattern here. So yeah, that the exterior beauty is on its way out. I don't know what's going on in the fashion industry. I think it was taken over by a bunch of commies, to be honest with you, and weirdos. But have you seen fashion? I mean, what the heck are those fashion shows? It's ridiculous. No one wears that stuff. I guess it's kind of an artistic thing, but it's not really that palatable. Um, but then, I mean, let's talk about interior beauty, okay? Now, I mentioned a mental experiment, and I'm not talking as if I'm perfect. I have things to work on too. But if you took, my mental experiment in my trailer, if you took someone's personality who you really love and put it into someone's an attractive body, suddenly that person you made in your head is vastly superior to the person that may have looked good, but they they may be a bit of a shark in the water. You know, obviously physical attractiveness does not equate to moral or intellectual attractiveness. Okay, um, and so there's clearly a lack of idealism going on here, and a lot of people are just ignorant. Okay, a lot of people don't. They look at me like I have three heads if I mentioned any of this, right? But someone's got to start somewhere, right? So that is where that is what you need for romance. You need the interior and the exterior, and you need a standard. Okay, you need a standard to always pursue that is not rest on the current trends because that can be manipulated all the time. You know, the current trendy new musicians, the current clothes to wear. On top of that, it's a disservice to the person's dignity. Okay, what is going on in our culture where people do not have their own thoughts or behaviors? That everything is based on what they've heard. I mean, you know, you've been reduced to what, an animal, right? You're like a donkey with the carrot. Like, where is your individuality? Where is your backbone, your spark, your uniqueness? What's going on here? I mean, it's bad. And how can romance stand without any truth? You know, how can you love someone who isn't being true to themselves, or at least how can you be inspired to love them, right? Maybe you can love them in a sympathetic way, you know, pray for them and try to explain to them, like, look, you're not being yourself, being a good friend. But, you know, in terms of having a relationship, oh, I don't know why everyone can't seem to stay together. Well, they're afraid of being themselves. You know, the PC culture, the inability to think, the inability to forgive each other, the inability to sacrifice and say, hey, maybe instead of saying me, I want them to do this, this, this. Maybe I should see how he or she, how I can make their day better, you know, or how I can, you know, it just goes on and on. Um, Now, let's move on to another fellow here. This is Fulton Sheen. I'll get to him. Okay. G.K. Chesterton, a great theologian and thinker. Um, and he had a problem with the current Lutheran traditionalism of the times. See, you may be listening to me and you may think of me as a prude, and trust me, I get how you feel. You may think, oh, who's this perfectionist dude, right? I'm not talking about perfectionism, which G.K. Chesterton was against. I'm talking about trying to always aim for a higher standard and loving it and having joy in it. Okay, and obviously, if I was promoting prudishness, that'd be bad because we're supposed to be humble. Okay, humility is part of this improvement we need to go through. In fact, it's really important because the pride issue is a problem with all five groups I mentioned. But I'm not talking about something strange like a lot of group number three does it, the traditionalists. All right. Oh, you have to, it's all about sacrifice. It's all of this lovey-dovey gushy stuff is is immature. It's you know, you're not like Jesus on the cross. You're not in pain. You're not willing to throw away anything that is, you know, like that is not, I'm talking about a that is not that is a martyr complex. Okay, that is not the Christian walk. Okay, you have a broken understanding of how even leading to sacrifice work. Sacrifice and Christian love, I believe, with the exception of God, who's all powerful, who can do anything, God created creation to help us grow and mature to the point of perfection. And the three loves that are involved in love are filial, agape, and eros. Familial love, romantic love, and um, sacrificial love. But all these three are married. They're like one. It's kind of like a holy trinity, okay? And one inspires the other, and the other inspires the other, and they spill into each other. And like Fulton Sheen says here, I remember he has a really good quote. You cannot fall in love with the virtue, you fall in love with the person. And through falling in love with the person, you gain virtue. That is the Christian walk. So that's why marriage is a sacrament, or considered that a sacrament, because you're falling in love with the person's good qualities, which is the virtue of hope, okay, which I'll get into later. Um, and through that, you learn to sacrifice for them, right? You open the door for them. You'll sacrifice time with your friends to be with them more. They're taking more priority over things. You're introducing your family to them. You're thinking about how, you could raise a family with them. Maybe you can see them as a good friend. They should be a friend to you, right? They should be a friend that can be honest with you, that can relax with you and enjoy time with you. Okay, all of that leads to sacrifice. But G.K. Chesterton saw these people really forcing it, and during this time in the 1800s, you have these novels like Jane Eyre, very good novel to read, and other novels which pointed out that there were a lot of arranged marriages. There was a lot of this warping. Oh, well, you must sacrifice, and all of this romance is nonsense, right? There was this weird thing where people like, on the one hand, I understand what they were saying that if it's all emotion, you got a problem. But on the other hand, the emotions exist for a reason. We're not angels. Adam and Eve were created to be attracted to each other, and it's a very beautiful thing. And G.K. Chesterton, like St. Thomas Aquinas up there, loved his wine. He actually got into many theological disputes over prohibition. But his main point was that the Christian walk should encompass everything. It is not merely stoicism or constant penance. It is a lifting of heart and mind and glorifying God in everything. God can be glorified in the flowers. God can be glorified, or you can at least see God in the matters of the heart, in someone you love, in recreation, in wine, even. He would always keep harping about, wine is used in the sacrament of in the holy sacrament. Why is that? And St. Thomas Aquinas loved his wine too. But yeah, I've actually had experiences in prayer which feel like being drunk in wine. Just last night, actually, um, because it's part of creation. And I kind of agree. I think that the wine points to some higher attribute of hope of heaven, of something so beautiful beyond our words, and so can human love. So let me just read right here what he said, or what this article says here. Um, Everybody knows Chesterton loved doing things for pure pleasure, even if it seems to us now dangerously like guilty pleasure. He loved a good smoke, he loved a good drink, he battled prohibition, teetotalism, puritanism, and incidentally Islam, all in the name of drinking. He frequently referred to the fact that Christianity made wine a sacrament, and drew far-reaching conclusions from that. But what was the true motive here? The true meaning of this peculiar crusade? Now, precisely this, that the love of drinking, which is, in most cases, just pleasure for its own sake, is the manifestation of a larger desire, that they have at their background something thrilling and mysterious, and though this something is not identical with them, nay, it surpasses them almost infinitely, in ordinary circumstances men do not possess any other manner of expressing it. If not seen in this light, Chesterton's anti-teetotalist campaign might seem a little excessive, a little nonsensical even, but the point is that it should be seen in this light. Drink because you are happy, but never because you are miserable. Never drink when you are wretched without it, or you will be like the gray-faced gin drinker in the slum. But drink when you would be happy without it, and you will be like the laughing peasant of Italy. Never drink because you need it, for this is rational thinking, and the way to death and hell. But drink because you do not need it, for this is irrational thinking and the ancient health of the world. So, have you ever had a time where you were with good company, beautiful day, maybe a good meal in front of you at a restaurant, and you're drinking wine and you're enjoying yourself, and you'll notice that the wine enhances the experience, and there's something going on where the it's almost like a ritual. The psychological environment raises the experience of getting a little bit tipsy with the wine, right? Well, the truth is that all of these things are, uh, we know now in science that all of this involves biochemistry, and spiritually speaking, you know, there's a difference between drinking when you're depressed, drinking your life away in a dingy bar or an alleyway, or doing a happy drinking session where you're just doing it because to lighten the heart. You're not doing it because you need it or you're addicted to it. You're doing it for that. But because of those two different situations I mentioned, we can see that there's something higher that changes one from the other, that makes that fermented drink completely different context than the other one. Okay? There's something that we're seeking within those things. Okay? Um, Again, that's more into mysticism. That's the longing that I'm talking about here. Okay, so what is that longing? What is that longing we're looking for? Okay, so this is St. Thomas Aquinas, and he wrote about everything. He wrote about all of these kinds of matters. He did write about eros, the feelings of romance, and not only did he say how important it is for self-love, and his self-love is not the kind of self-love we're talking about in pop psychology, but he identified it that it is indeed part of the the bridegroom himself, the mystical bridegroom Jesus Christ. It is a part of God's inherent nature. Actually, eros is part of it. It reflects Him. It's part of His nature, and He exemplifies it. I think one of my first breakthroughs in prayer and in contemplative type prayer, or being open to that, was when I read the Catechism, and I also reflected on the passage that God is love. And I couldn't help, and my mind was drawn to the fact that if God is love, how beautiful is He? You know. Now, I'm not saying like He's an energy source. Again, that's more Eastern mysticism, and I disagree with that. Um, but I mean that His nature. I mean, we talk about the beatific vision in the church, which is a more specific way of explaining the glory of heaven. And it literally says that the ecstasy of heaven that completely fulfills the soul in every way, in all three forms, you gaze upon the face of God. And it is so glorious that if you are not completely on His wavelength, if you are not, if you're not in mystical union with Him already, you go to purgatory, which means the soul is so ashamed in the light of His love of its flaws and its sins or whatever. It either goes to hell or purgatory. It's kind of like an oil and water thing. So imagine meeting someone so beautiful, who shows His full glory, that you just have a heart attack. I mean, um, and you're completely at sorrow with how you just fail to compare utterly. I mean, you're nothing. The dark night of the soul. Um, that's incredible. I mean, I maybe meeting some of our famous, our best heroes may do that. Meeting someone you really admire, you're like, wow, I'm a slob. Um, but someone that makes you burn with passion. You hear these mystical encounters with God, and like they burn with passion and contriteness of heart, because they're like, Saint Francis of Assisi, excuse me, had one of these experiences where he said, "What would you have with a worm like me, O Lord?" He was just so, and this is Saint Francis of Assisi, and he's just feels like, I'm a worm. We are not worthy. Bill and Ted, Excellent Adventure, that Thomas always mentions, right? They're just that is what we're talking about, okay? And that's part of my faith, and that's a reality that 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 the human love we see with the good things we see in it is just a reflection of an infinite being. So that should scare the bejeebers out of us, because if if human love is so twisted and trashy now, and with our already confused standards, what does it look like compared to God's standards and to who God is? Okay, because this was during, these people having these encounters were pretty virtuous people. These were holy people, and they're like, this is, because they're encountering love and beauty himself, infinite love and beauty, that which completely fulfills. And yeah, that's pretty intimidating. It's a good kind of intimidating. It's a kind of intimidating that inspires you to keep trying to be more like the flowers, to be more sacrificial, to be more kind and compassionate to people. Just like how a man, and that's why you have in the Bible the Song of Songs and all these allegories of Christ being a bridegroom, right? Just like how a man and women fall in love with each other and they have this goo goo gaga honeymoon thing, right? Where they suddenly, they're making breakfast for each other, the drapes, clean, all this stuff. They're inspired to love each other. They're in rapture, right? It's the same thing with God and the soul. Okay, so Thomas Aquinas points out that there's two elements. There's the element of concupiscence, or the striving for hope. Concupiscence is our brokenness, and when we're in love with someone, how they look, how they are, we want to complete ourselves through that person. Now, that's an imperfect form of love, right? It really is, because, it's kind of a little bit codependent, but it's important, okay? He actually gives a human aspect, and a healthy aspect to this, as long as it's, as long as it's done soberly and truthfully. You're not getting involved with someone who's, just, some wolf in sheep's clothing. They just look good. But my point is that he says that this is important for self-love. The psychological dynamics of a man seeking a woman and a woman seeking a man, and the bodily attraction and the spiritual attraction and the psychological attraction builds self-love. Okay, it builds when you're loved, you can more easily love. That's his point. Not to be codependent. Codependency is when you are so desperate that you believe it's usually based on atheism, codependency, I'm finding, or a very bad connection with God. The codependency happens when you want that person and you don't want to sacrifice anything for it, and often you have nothing other than that person, no transcendental values. It's just that person. That's where an obsession happens, and I need to have them. And a lot of the times, people that are codependent they know deep down that this person actually isn't good for them, because there's usually a perfectionist power dynamic where that person that they're usually crushing on is a demanding person, and they're like groveling to get attention, like affection. Whereas a good person or a humble person would usually hear them out, usually be direct with them, wouldn't string them along, and recognize their own imperfections. And why don't we see that? Why don't we see that humility? Like, okay, let's go out, and they're not perfect, but I like them, and I'm not going to ghost them or play games with them. I'm not going to wrap them up in agendas. It's very strange. And if we're not meant to be, there'll be a peaceable transition, an explanation that they're not the one. And it's there's something very inhuman and cold going on within, and I think it's because we're raised on textbooks. We're not raised on matters of love. We're not raised to feed our soul. We just don't know what the heck we're doing. There's a study that came out that said people are more comfortable with hooking up than having a date with a cup of coffee in a cafe. I mean, you know, you want to talk about social brokenness. I mean, yeah, we're we've been turned into cavemen with smartphones. Um, ooh, how do I shrink him back here? St. Thomas is going back here. Put Jesus here. Okay, so now all of this is talk. All of this is talk if there's no actual experience. I keep talking about this experience with God, right? I keep talking about love and how it's connected to God and the flowers and nature and all these guys who talk about it. But is this for real? You know we need it. We need idealism back. We need Christ back in romance. We need God who is love. If we're not connecting with love himself, I would think there'd be some repercussions to our own ventures. But group number one is suffering. They don't know what they're doing. All they know is hookup culture. Um, and group number three is trying to hate themselves into virtue, and they're not getting the healing they need. Group number four is hating the world and themselves. The doomers, they're hating themselves, and traditionalists are hating themselves in a weird way. um, what to do? The answer is, we need just to double down into prayer. But by that I mean contemplative prayer, okay? So that we can experience the love of God. We can experience love himself. And once you have a free taste of love himself, a lot of this stress goes away. I can personally attest to it, okay? I am a lot less nerve-wracked about being alone. Loneliness becomes solitude, okay? And you're not as intimidated by people who try to have agendas, okay? Who want to, they want to use their charms and charm you away into some game on the dating life because you already found someone who surpasses everything, okay? Um, and we do that right here on the channel, Sacred Heart Contemplation, okay? Um, Speaking of flowers, again, in the church, the heart of Jesus and Jesus himself, there's a title for him. There's a flower attributed to him. A red rose is usually attributed to him, as well as Mother Mary. She's called the Mystic Rose. Okay, and I have to say that in encountering Christ in the Sacred Heart, I have experienced that side of him. Right? It's imagine if we always think about gravity and these forces of nature. Put that aside. Imagine if the metaphysical, the emotions, right? All these passions. Imagine if there's a king of those passions who's perfect in every way, and reflects that, or practically is it himself. He's a person, but we know that love is his nature. Okay, it's real. It really is, and it will flow. It will flow into your soul. His love will flow into your soul. It'll begin healing it and giving you hope. And through that, like St. Thomas Aquinas, through that virtue of hope, you will be able to love others better, and you'll be able to love yourself better. That's the kind of self-love, through an experience of authentic love, especially in this time where there's so many broken families. You can't rely a lot of the time on parents. You can't. I'm going to be real with you. Many of them are failing at their jobs. There are too many children that do not have. They have bull love, as my pastor says. It's manipulated love, and a lot of that does have to do with the problems that we're seeing. Okay, and and so we need to go to the source now. All right. And my last point, that's the virtue of hope, and then there's the virtue of love, which we mean charity love, the one that's most closely connected to God, which leads to sacrifice. You know, how many people on these profiles talk about how they want to build up people around them, or are so caught up in sacrificial love that, you know, they want to have a family to glorify God or to feed the poor or to do. Wouldn't that be cool? Like a heroic family of people. Like we didn't get together because we just like each other. You know, I mean, everyone does that. We get together because there's some higher, you know, we want to take on the world together and make it better, right? We want to love other people. We want to keep pushing love. You know, that's very rare. I've never heard, you know, most people stay to themselves. They're content, or they seem content. And sometimes, if they have a good enough prayer life, they'll do a few things for other people, other strangers. But I haven't seen someone really passionate, you know, and I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying that they're not good Christians or anything. I'm just saying that where is the drive for perfection, you know? Because I think Saint John Paul II, another great speaker on this, who wrote the Theology of the Body, which everyone should check out. I'll put a link to it in the description. Said that marriage itself doesn't completely fulfill. Eventually, you want more than marriage, because marriage is actually supposed to bring you towards God, and get your family and loved ones into heaven, and it's supposed to bring you to the source. You know, a lot of people that have been with each other, like these older couples, like, you know, the World War II generation, that you can tell they love each other. When you run into a World War II generation couple that are in love, that have been anniversary after anniversary, and that are holy people, they can tell you the honeymoon is usually nothing compared to the love they experience as they grow in deeper and deeper intimacy and friendship, even when they get older, right? And that's a spiritual thing. That is, you know, and I think even group number one, the hedonists, are starting to see that. You know, everyone's into all kinds of stuff in the sexual perversion area, and we're all struggling with it. But I think, you know, we're all hitting that rock bottom. You know, there's a meme that's on the internet that says, I don't want to be horny anymore. I just want to be happy. And I think there's a little bit of truth to that. You know, the guys that are saying that and joking about it, with all the pornography out there, they're starting to have that buyer's remorse, that alcoholic who's finally starting to just lose it. You know, he's just self-medicating. The people that are into the hookup culture and all that. But I don't think they can hate themselves out of it. Some of them are trying to. I see people try to do that. Again, I think we need to seek the Lord and to avoid the pitfalls of the prudish Lutherans, the prudish 1800s culture, which might have started a lot of this, okay? It might have, because people were repressing their feelings so much, then came the sexual revolution where they're like, well, wait, we're so repressed, how about we do the opposite? And as long as it feels good, let's do it, you know? Cocaine, woohoo. What could go wrong, you know? STDs, what's that? I don't know, let's do it. And I think that there's a pendulum swing, but that pendulum is wrong. That pendulum's got to be cut right off. We got to just, the whole thing's just BS, all right? um, I think that there's this song. I'll just end with this. I'm a little bit over time, but there's this song. If anyone's into hard rock, probably not, but if anyone's into hard rock from the early 2000s, if you're young and you're into that stuff, there's a song called "Wait" by Earshot. It's not so much the lyrics, but it's the video itself. The imagery of that video, I think, shows the healing process of what I'm talking about that God can do, and I think He's doing it within me. In this video, the singer's singing. It's clearly about love or the passions or something. It could be taken in many ways, but he's chasing after this beautiful girl in this field. He's walking after her, and it's clearly like a representation of him longing for someone else, and she's looking back, she's running away, and he's chasing. It could, you know, it could represent an ideal woman. It could represent someone he may have loved, a crush in high school or college. I don't know, right? And and then it switches to him sitting on a couch in the middle of the field, and he's just longing and longing for more. And so he chases after some more, and eventually she's on the couch and she kind of holds his hand, But then in the longing, he's clearly in some kind of longing pain, but then he pulls his hand away, and she disappears, and that could represent maybe a breakup, or he realizing he can't find that special person, or it probably won't happen, or maybe he realizes that she's not the person he thought she was. He's disillusioned, okay, but that longing is still there. He's wearing dark clothes. It's nighttime, okay, and then when the song hits its crescendo, the morning comes, and he's wearing white clothes, and he's wearing, this guy, good looking guy with some pretty cool clothes. He got leather pants, typical rock long hairstyle, but he's wearing white clothes, and he's singing with great passion still, the same passion he did when he was wearing the dark clothes, and the light shining on him. He seems a little bit happier. And I think what he's seeing there, what we're seeing there, is the healing I'm talking about, where it's transference. He somehow transferred his energy that he was using to long after this person that might have been imaginary or wasn't who he thought she was, into a greater passion for life. The vitality is going into other things. Maybe he became a great poet. Maybe he became a rock musician. Maybe that's what he's talking about. He found out that he was meant to be a musician. Maybe in prayer and finding God, or helping people. But he's finding that there's more to it than just me, I need to get this. That this is meant to be brought to something higher, and that my energy can be transferred into loving people and loving everyone, right? And of course, I'm not saying that that's all it is. Of course, that we will always have that desire, unless you're meant to be a priest or something, to to be one with someone else. Okay, desire for marriage, but there's a spiritual marriage, and that's what I'm talking about. That is the healthy healing that I think we need to do. It's not hating yourself. It's not putting on a facade. It's not giving up. It's none of that. It's gently giving it all to God, being transformed in that same very energy, being purified, that energy being purified, and you becoming more passionate, and except in a pure and holy and good way that will benefit you in everything, whether it's love, whether it's a job, whether it's heroically for some cause, sacrificing for some cause, being a police officer, being whatever. This is something that's good. Creation is good. It's just we're broken, and we need to be fixed up so that we can function. Our circuits can fire correctly. As Blessed Fulton Sheen said, if this be the spark, if this romantic human romance be the spark, what must be the flame? In one of his teachings. So that's my whole dissertation here. It's something I've always wanted to get off my chest. I hope it helped. I will link the Theology of the Body in the description. Let me just check the comments for any Q&A here. Oh, looks like there's only one person watching. Well, I guess everyone was busy that was currently watching. But we will continue these kinds of discussions when it comes to religion. So look forward to that, and I hope you have a blessed rest of the Saturday, and hope to talk to you soon. Take care. Oh, and happy Valentine's Day.